The Blood of Dawnwalker is an upcoming third-person action RPG with a strong focus on narrative choice and open-world exploration, and it could very well turn out to be the most ambitious RPG of 2026. How's it going, by the way? Mr. Holton here, and now is probably a good time for me to say that I've actually played it. However, I'm unfortunately not at liberty to talk about it just yet, but in case you're interested in watching my future first impressions video, then remember to subscribe. But for now, I'm gonna stick to the official sources. So here's everything that you need to know about the Blood of Dawnwalker. First of all, the Blood of Dawnwalker is being developed by Rebel Wolves, a studio founded by Konrad Tomaskevitz, the former game director of The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, alongside a big roster of ex-CD Projekt Red veterans. And during their reveal events, Rebel Wolves have made it clear that the Blood of Dawnwalker is a pure single-player action RPG. So, no microtransactions and no live service elements. Instead, Dawnwalker is a deep, handcrafted dark fantasy experience that's inspired by games such as Fallout 2, The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, and many more. Essentially, Rebel Wolves wanted an old-school level of narrative sandbox where you are dropped into a world and can genuinely shape your own story and the world you journey through. Speaking of the world, welcome to Vale Sangora. The game takes place in the Carpathian Mountains during the 14th century, and things are looking pretty grim. Europe has at this point been ravaged by the Black Death, war, and famine, and humanity is at its lowest point. And this is exactly when the vampires decide to make their move. Led by an ancient and immensely powerful vampire named Brensis, the vampires, or Vrakir as they're referred to as here, systematically overthrow the feudal lords, move into their castles, and establish a new world order in Vale Sangora. Now, Brensis runs the valley, and in exchange for curing the plague and offering protection, humans are essentially treated as free-range cattle. And to keep the peace, the citizens have to pay a blood tax at the local cathedral every week during a ritual called the Blood Mass. Now let's just say that not everyone's a fan. Enter our protagonist, Coen. Now this young man isn't a grizzled century-old monster hunter with a gravelly voice and a list of cynical one-liners. Coen is a younger, more vulnerable guy who is desperately trying to save his family after they find themselves in Brensis' clutches. Now Coen has a pretty interesting advantage, as thanks to a severe case of silver poisoning from his time working in the mines, he is somewhat protected. So when he finally gets bitten, he doesn't really fully turn. Instead, he becomes the Dawnwalker. God, that's terrible. By day, he is a sword-wielding, magic-casting human, but when the sun goes down, he transforms into a vicious, super-powered creature of the night.
And both choices can lead to unexpected outcomes. We began with death from above, allowing us to quickly eliminate an unsuspecting enemy and gain the upper hand from the start.
Alright, we gotta talk about the elephant in the room here, because just after The Blood of Dawnwalker was first announced, pretty much all of us got anxiety when we learned that there is a timer. Yes, you have a deadline, 30 days and 30 nights to save your family before Brensis holds his coronation and marks the occasion with their sweet, sweet bodily juices. But I'm gonna need you guys to take a deep breath, because Rebel Wolves is designing this to be a resource management mechanic and not an actual real-time clock. That is to say, if you just want to run around Vale Sangora, admire the gorgeous mountain views, test out your character build, clear out a camp of soldiers, or chat with random villagers, time stands completely still. You are free to explore the open world entirely at your own pace, should you choose to. You see, time only moves forward when you actually get down to business. That means major objectives, specific story segments, and certain pivotal dialogue choices are explicitly marked with a small hourglass icon. That is to say, the game will always tell you exactly how many fragments of your 8-part daily time bar an action will cost, letting you make an informed decision before you commit to anything. Now this naturally leads us to the narrative sandbox nature of the game. You see, when designing the Blood of Dawnwalker, Rebel Wolves didn't think of the story as in your typical main quests and side quests fashion. That is to say, there are simply stories that you choose to weave together, and because your time is limited, it is mathematically impossible to do everything to achieve a perfect happy outcome for everyone in a single playthrough. For example, choosing to ignore a village in need or prioritizing a personal storyline has big and permanent repercussions on your game. And so this brings us to the game's core duality, the day and night cycle. You see, the world transforms when the sun goes down, streets clear out, fog rolls in, and different monsters come out to play. But it also changes how you manage Coen. During the day, your health doesn't passively regenerate, meaning you have to rely on eating foods or using consumables to stay alive. But at night, well, your health bar pulls double duty as your blood hunger meter. Every single night, Coen turns ravenous, and to unlock your full vampiric perks and keep your monstrous side in check, you have to feed, aka drink blood. If you, for example, let your hunger level drop too low, you risk losing control during a standard conversation and accidentally draining an important story NPC or a close friend, or maybe a romance option, which could permanently break their questline. But you can also choose to play a more humane and quote-unquote vegetarian style by only draining rats and wild animals, but it's way less efficient than going after a human target. Now, when it comes to the combat, well, it's a pretty big departure from standard action RPG button mashing, because you see, Rebel Wolves implemented a directional combat system heavily inspired by Kingdom Come Deliverance and For Honor. Here you manually choose to attack and defend from 4 directions, which is up, down, left, or right, to hit your opponent where they are unable to parry. This means you have to actually watch your enemies who will try to flank you, switch positions, and work together to take you down. However, if directional combat sounds too sweaty for you, they included an omnidirectional guard and strike system that simplifies things at the cost of extra stamina consumption. And you can even drop your sword and let your fists do the talking should you want to. But a sword and fists can only get you so far. You see, Coen is also a magic user, but the spells here are pretty nasty. Magic in Vale Sangora is dark and ritualistic, and to cast spells, Coen has to carve runes into his own flesh like a twisted tattoo sleeve. Like in true Full Metal Alchemist fashion, manipulating reality comes with a price, meaning those spells cost your actual health points to cast. But let me tell you, it's worth it, as you have access to Burning Blood to boil an enemy's blood from the inside out, or cast Feral Mind, turning the minds of your enemies as they snap and attack everything around them. You even get an ability called Compel Soul that lets you drag secrets out of the dead to uncover hidden questlines. And because this relies on his bleeding wounds, Coen can only use magic during the day. This means that once night falls, Coen's runes heal into scars, and he taps into his vampiric savagery. As a vampire, you can swap your sword for your claws and rip enemies apart using a more savage combat style.
When an enemy blocks and interrupts our attack chain, we can use charge to prevent a counterattack.
However, the real star of Coen's toolkit is traversal, as during nighttime you gain access to Shadow Step to teleport across short distances and rooftops. Then we have Plane Shift to smoothly walk on walls and ceilings to ambush enemies and explore tall buildings, and Claw Ride to scale down from heights like towers and such. And if that isn't enough, you can even unlock a perk to transform into a wolf to move quickly across the map.
And move faster at night. It's quicker and more agile, though it comes with some limitations. There's also a daytime equivalent, but more on that later.
Speaking of perks, the Blood of Dawnwalker has a pretty robust progression system, as aside from powerful weapons and armor, you have various skill trees where you can unlock some really powerful abilities. But the best thing about leveling your skills is that you cannot just upgrade Coen willy-nilly, as first you have to find shrines scattered around the world to actually level Coen, and secondly you need to find skill books out in the world in order to invest in a perk. This means that the game massively encourages you to explore the world and all its corners if you want to truly unlock Coen's full power, which you'll definitely want to do before even attempting to save Coen's family. And to save Coen's family, your ultimate goal is to storm Brenz's fortress, Castle Griefburg. Now, technically, Rebel Wolves have said you can grab a sword and march right up to the front gates at any point, but doing that early on is basically a suicide mission. Instead, the game encourages you to systematically dismantle Brent's regime by targeting his 3 powerful vampire officers, each ruling over their own sphere of influence in the valley. First up is Ambrose, who manages the regime's blood supply chains in heavily guarded warehouses. Then there's Xanthi, the oldest vampire in Vale Sangora, who commands elite blood guards and wields blood control abilities like flesh-ripping blood whips. And finally, there's Bakir, a big, agile powerhouse of a boss whose fight choreography was actually motion captured by former UFC light heavyweight champion John Blachowicz. Now, every time you hit these lieutenants where it hurts, like sabotaging a blood transport or burning down a supply warehouse, you trigger the game's global notoriety system. You see, as your infamy rises, Brent's actively notices your disruptions and fires back by issuing harsh valley-wide edicts. Now, these dynamically alter the open world, turning peaceful roads into high-alert zones packed with military checkpoints and aggressive guards. But on the bright side, racking up a bounty also alerts the local resistance, opening up entirely new questlines and hidden opportunities with factions who hate the vampire regime. Now, what's more is that you don't have to wage this guerrilla war completely alone either, as throughout Vale Sangora you'll cross paths with unique secondary characters having their own motivations and agendas. For example, you'll meet Marat, the leader of the human rebellion who possesses a moral compass but openly worries if whatever replaces Brent's will actually be any better. Then there's Lakra, a warrior whose mysterious personal mission takes precedence over the rebellion, often putting her directly at odds with everyone else. Now, how you interact with these characters completely alters your narrative sandbox. You can befriend them to recruit help for your final assault on the castle, alienate them entirely, or choose a different path through the shadows by yourself. Rebel Wolves also took a lot of community feedback to heart during development, because if you watched their early gameplay reveals and worried about the tight camera placement, they've since added adjustable camera options, letting you pull the view further back for combat and exploration separately, and they reworked the flow of combat skills based on player feedback. So, when can you finally get your hands on the Blood of Dawnwalker? Well, the game will launch on the 3rd of September 2026 for Xbox Series X and S, PlayStation 5, and PC. But if you're playing on PC, you might want to check your rig before that, as to run the game at 1080p on the lowest settings, you will need 60 gigs of SSD space, 16 gigs of RAM, an i5 11400F or an AMD Ryzen 7 2700X, and at least a GTX 1060 or an RX 580. Of course, the game will support DLSS and FSR, which should help soften the blow on your hardware in case you're looking to max the game out. Now, as for which version to grab, Rebel Wolves are keeping it simple without locking any gameplay behind paywalls. The Digital Standard Edition is exactly what it sounds like, while the Digital Eclipse Edition packs in a Digital World Compendium, a comic book, and the official soundtrack. If you prefer physical media, the Day 1 edition comes with a steelbook case and a physical map of Vale Sangora. And for you Ultimate fans, the Collector's Edition features everything in the Day 1 version, plus a physical world compendium, and a detailed figurine of Coen brandishing his sword while displaying his claws. Pre-ordering any edition will get you an early unlock code for the Sangoran Wayfarer's armor set, but don't sweat it if you decide to wait, as that armor can still be found in the open world normally during your playthrough. But that is basically everything you need to know about the Blood of Dawnwalker before it arrives this September. Now, if you got any questions or anything you're curious about, let me know in the comments below as always, and don't forget to subscribe for more Dawnwalker coverage. I'll see you in the next one. Mr. Alton, signing off.